Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review.
President Biden's urgent plea to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu sent shockwaves through Israel as he warns against judicial reform. Biden emphasizes the need for a national consensus, highlighting the delicate future of the U.S.-Israel relationship.
In a significant development, U.S. President Joe Biden has urged Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to halt the judicial reform, this according to a new New York Times report. Tom Friedman, author of the report, revealed that President Biden summoned him to the White House following his meeting with Israeli President Yitzhak Herzog. President Biden expressed his respect for the ongoing protests in Israel. However, he also emphasized his desire for Netanyahu's coalition to cease its push for legislation without a national consensus. Friedman's report, published shortly after President Biden's meeting with Herzog, sheds light on the nature of the discussion between Biden and Netanyahu. In their first conversation in 4 months, Netanyahu assured Biden that he would finalize the reasonability bill and then seek a broader agreement for the remaining aspects of the judicial reform during the Knesset summer recess. According to Friedman, President Biden made it clear that he can no longer remain silent on this matter. He expressed his concerns about Israel's stability and future, emphasizing his unwavering support for Israel as the most valuable U.S. ally in the Middle East. However, Biden's message to Netanyahu was ambiguous: to stop his legislative efforts immediately. Moreover, President Biden recommended that Israeli leadership refrain from rushing into legislation and instead focus on reaching a consensus, understanding that such processes require time. Biden's plea to Netanyahu aimed to convey that if Israel and the U.S. diverge in their democratic values, the special relationship enjoyed by Israel over its 75 years of independence may not endure for another 75 years.
Bipartisan Congress members unite to tackle Palestinian Authority's Pay for Slay scheme and urge action from U.S. State Department. ILTV's William Sharon has more.
In a bipartisan effort, 30 Democratic and 20 Republican members of Congress have written a letter to Secretary of State Antony Blinken, requesting an update on the U.S. government's plan to end the Palestinian Authority's controversial Pay for Slay scheme. Under this scheme, known as the Martyrs Fund, terrorists are rewarded with monetary payments for carrying out acts of terror. Currently, the scheme costs the Palestinian Authority $300 million annually, accounting for 8% of its budget. The United States suspended funding to the Palestinian Authority in 2014 due to its refusal to abandon the program. In 2018, the U.S. Congress passed the Taylor Force Act, aimed at dissuading the PA from incentivizing terrorism. The congressional members expressed deep concern over the recent surge in violence, with Israeli civilians falling victim to terrorist attacks. They highlighted the celebration of cold-blooded murderers of Israelis. The letter emphasized the Palestinian Authority's refusal to condemn these killings and called for an end for the Pay for Slay program. The congressional members acknowledged the administration's shared view that supporting terrorism and treating the martyrs' payment system as a social warfare is unacceptable. However, they pointed out that despite Taylor Force Act being signed into law 5 years ago, the PA continues to bolster the Martyrs Fund. They urged the State Department to update Congress on negotiations to end the program and called on the administration to address the issue with Palestinian officials.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple. And in other news, normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel may still be a ways away, but that doesn't mean progress isn't already being made. A new report from Impact SE has found that Saudi Arabia has removed anti-Semitic content from its school textbooks. And so joining us now with more is Marcus Sheff, CEO of Impact SE. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
So what can you tell us about this latest report? What exactly did you find?
Well, Impact SC has been reviewing the Saudi curriculum since 2008, and this curriculum has always been particularly high profile, particularly in the United States. Following 9/11, of course, 15 of the 19 terrorists were educated in Saudi schools, and bin Laden himself, and they have been insistent, both on the Hill and the State Department, that changes need to be made in the Saudi curriculum. So over a decade, a great deal of pressure was put on Saudi Arabia. Changes were not, however, made. But in 2019, a real absolute revolution happened in Saudi education. We were able to present our 2019 report and policy recommendations to the Saudis. And Crown Prince MBZ, as he is known, Mohammed bin Salman, took up the burden of making significant changes to the textbooks, to the education in Saudi schools. And now here we are in 2023, so that's 8 semesters after reform, and almost all the anti-Semitism previously identified problematic examples regarding Jews and Christians as well in Islamic studies have been removed. Negative portrayals of Jews, all kinds of ideas of Jews as animals, as apes, as donkeys, as pigs. This has been taken out. Jews as untrustworthy. All of this is out. And with that is out material which was negative about infidels, about polytheists as well, problematic examples in relation to jihad and martyrdom. All of this has been removed. It is really incredibly significant, incredibly important. And I think now, looking at 6 million children in Saudi Arabian schools, imagine that they are getting an education which is free of the kind of hate which Saudi Arabian children were subject to before this reform, which, as I say, started in 2020.
So this is really, really positive news. I mean, can you give us maybe some concrete examples how, for example, they address Israel before and after the reform?
Well, the Israel material is not gone through the kind of evolution that the anti-Semitic material has gone through. So there is moderation in relation to the way Israel is portrayed. There is still a deal of anti-Israel material within the textbooks. But I can tell you, for example, that a whole chapter, which was highly critical of Israel in social studies, has just recently been taken out. So we're seeing real moderation there. I think also really interesting is new material which we see in the curriculum, which is highly critical of Hezbollah, of ISIS, of Al-Qaeda, of Houthi militia, of the Muslim Brotherhood, all criticized, all considered to be incendiary terrorist organizations. So I think that is very significant in and of itself.
Absolutely. I mean, very significant and a very good sign for Saudi Arabia and for, possibly future relations with Israel. I'm curious, what about other areas that you've sort of examined, like in the Palestinian Authority, whose textbooks are also rife with incitements against Jews, against Israel? Has there been any progress made on that front?
Certainly none at all in the Palestinian textbooks, which are taught across the Palestinian Authority, as you know, also in Jerusalem and in Gaza. And they are unrelenting in their radicalism. These textbooks essentially have a vision of one state, one Palestine from the river to the sea, which will be gained through jihad, through martyrdom. Young children are encouraged to sacrifice themselves physically for the Palestinian Authority. It is a school curriculum which contains anti-Semitic ideas, which contains ideas including that death is better than life. That is one of the ways that young children are encouraged to sacrifice themselves. Terrorists like al-Mughrabi is put on a pedestal 5 times in this school curriculum as a role model, particularly for young girls. Of course, she was involved in the Coastal Road Massacre, where 38 people were killed, including 13 children. It is a school curriculum which has not changed since the reform.
Absolutely. Good news on that front. Let's hope that the Palestinian Authority will also adopt some of these changes as well. Marcus Sheff, thank you so much for your insight today.
Pleasure.
In our top story today, 3 Israelis have been wounded in a shooting attack at the Tekoa junction in the Jerusalem area. The 35-year-old man was swiftly transported to Jerusalem's Shaare Tzedek hospital by the Magen David Adom ambulance service. Although his condition is serious, it has been reported as stable. The man's 2 daughters, aged 9 and 14, were also taken to the same hospital due to injuries caused by shrapnel. The victims have been identified as Elroi Kapach and his 2 daughters, Rachel and Avigail, who reside in the nearby Nokdim settlement. At the Shaare Tzedek hospital, the condition of Kapach improved, and in Bethlehem, an exchange of fire began in an attempt to stop the terrorist who was eventually caught in a Bethlehem mosque. Over the past year, there have been multiple instances of Palestinian gunmen targeting military installations, troops patrolling the Judean-Samaria security barrier, Israeli settlements, and civilians traveling on the roads.